Well, welcome everybody to our webinar on major upgrades to Blueprinter software. We got a lot in store for you here today. And then we're going to record this. So if you want to watch it again, you can. But maybe more important, you may have some colleagues who weren't able to join us. They may be users of Blueprinting, and you may want them to know about steps 4 and 5 now in the cloud. And you may want them to know about AI, the functionality we've got. So, Scott, should they, do you have your email address in the chat? Is that where that's at?
I will put it in there in a second. Right now, it's I'm busy keeping this door open, letting people in. I'll
Yeah,
put it
yeah.
in there.
After Scott's pretty busy right now, letting folks in, but in a little bit, he'll put his email address in there. And if you want a copy, a PDF of the slides, you can go ahead, let him know if you want the recording. I think you'll probably send out to people that you have their email addresses, but a lot of times this gets passed around,
the
right?
software we use for all VOC activities.
Yeah, if anybody
It
wants
steps us
a
through. So
copy of the slides that we'll see
apparently coming up
shortly.
with new
Or hold on one
software
second here.
stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. If anybody wants a copy of the slides later or wants for the chat, just drop me an email. I'll also put a link in there. You can just set up a meeting with me as well, a Calendly link.
Great. Well, why don't I go ahead?
Yeah,
I will get us started. All right. You keep letting them in, and I'll get us started here. So we're going to cover Blueprinter steps 4 and 5, which, as I say, we've had ever since 2005 when we started the company, but we've only had it in Excel. Now it's in the cloud. And then we're also going to talk about how we're using artificial intelligence now to enable some discovery interviews. And that part's really pretty cool. And then we're going to take like maybe 4 or 5 minutes at the very end. If you haven't heard about our new Everyday VOC, it's not really a software upgrade, although there is some new stuff there. We're going to let you know about that as well. Okay. So, as you know, new product blueprinting has got 7 steps in it. And what makes for a really successful product launch? Well, you may not have thought about it this way, but there's really 2 things that come into play. First of all, your new product has to deliver significant value to customers. But the second part is customers can't get this value anywhere else. So we learn about A with our interviews, but really it's a side-by-side testing that really informs us on B. Now you get a clue in your preference interviews. If they say they're very dissatisfied with their ability to conquer some outcomes, well, they're probably having a hard time getting it somewhere else. But you really learn a lot more when you do the full side-by-side testing. Here are the advantages. When you do that competitive testing, you make sure you're not blindsided by a competitor who does have some good things. You find weak chinks in their armor to attack, the competitors, that is. You engage your customers more. You don't have this testing stall when you get into the development stage because you don't know how to test to see if customers like it, because now you do. And you're going to know how to price your product. You know, the only thing that tells us how to price our product is the amount of value we deliver over the next best alternative. We don't know what that next best alternative is. We're kind of guessing. And there's a little bonus. You got some competitive data to use in your launch messaging. So you remember during preference interviews, you got importance ratings, right? You got satisfaction ratings. And then you also, if you had time, you learned how they measure things. So if you make corrugated boxes and you're talking to Amazon and they're complaining about water pickup and damage from moisture, how would you test that? Well, maybe they use this water absorption test and they see how many grams of water. If it's over 150 grams of pickup, they got too much damage. If it's less than 100, they're totally satisfied. So anyway, that's the background. You may be asking, well, why am I doing this? Well, it's actually to set up step 4. And so this is now in the cloud. There is no extra cost to your Blueprinter software. So whatever you're paying now, you just keep paying that. And we do have a new demo. So what happens is when you're done with steps 1, 2, and 3, you kind of need to lock that down and then go to step 4. Because if you keep moving things around in the first 3 steps, things blow up afterwards, okay? So what you want to do is if you check out this demo, go to Acme Packaging 4.5. And I like to pin it so I can get at that easily. So what we're going to do now is take a look at steps 4 and 5. Woohoo, We're in the cloud now, so pretty exciting, at least for me. So let me go ahead and jump over here. We always start life over at the Blueprinting Center, and we're going to open up the software. And here it comes, a little bit of slow here. And I'm going to open up this demo Acme packaging, okay? Now notice steps 1, 2, and 3 are locked down. You can still go back and look at a preference interview, and you can see that at Amazon, they not only gave you these ratings here, but they also told you how they measure things like water absorption and then other things. So that is all there in step 3. So now we're going to go to step 4. So the first thing you want to do is figure out which outcomes you want to test and how much rigor. Now, you may do a full test on these, okay? And that's what most of what we're going to talk about will cover. Vertical crushing, you're going to measure water, moisture damage, and so forth. But you might also just estimate on a 1 to 10 satisfaction or ignore the test completely. Now it's time to design your tests. By the way, I'm going to go quickly, but you can always check in with us or a coach and we can work with you more on this. And there's e-learning too. At any rate, notice here, moisture damage. It lets you look to see what any of your interviewees said, how they would know on this, the Cobb water absorption test, what would be barely acceptable, what would be totally satisfied. How about box vertical crushing? Here, it's a number of boxes before it gets crushed. So you can look over your preference data here to set up your test. Then you got to figure out which tests or which products to test from your company and others. Then you start recording the test. So here we go, moisture damage. Our products are over here. The competitive products are over here. We had some off the shelf we wanted to see because we haven't designed a new product yet. If you don't have any, just leave these blank. But here, how many grams of water pickup was it? Or how many boxes could be stacked before the thing crushed? Then you're going to record these and you're going to compare. Now, the software will give you a comparison. The orange ones are all of your competitive products, and the gray is your off-the-shelf product if you have one. And you can see it's converted the test results, number of boxes before crushing, number of grams of water pickup. It's converted those into 1 to 10 scores, keeping the same anchor points as we had in the preference interviews. 5 is barely acceptable, 10 is totally satisfied. So that's what step 4 looks like. Now it's time to set your product objectives. So you go back and review your preference data and you review your competitive test data. But this is where it gets really fun. The blue is your new product design. So remember, the orange are your competitive products, the 3 best. Gray was your best off-the-shelf product. And okay, we think we can get 7 boxes here before it gets crushed. We think that moisture damage, we can go with 90 grams. So we set this up, and now we have our radar chart here. And so once again, you see the orange is competitors. Blue is your new design. You can change this. Now, over on the right, we have something called an outside-in score. This is an average of all the test results converted to 1 to 10. So if you had 100, that means it maxed out on all the side-by-side testing. Now, it's not a simple average. It's actually weighted according to importance. Because remember, on these 10 outcomes, we also have importance scores from preference interviews. And some are more important than others, so we weight them accordingly. Now, you might say, well, 85 is nice, but what if I could get all the way up to 8 boxes? No need to go more, right? Because that's totally satisfied. What if I could get 500 PSI before it tears? And what if I could get my recycled content up to 95%? Now I've got a product that's going to go 90. So that's how you would set this up. And then you can also even create a multi-generational plan showing where you're going to improve things. Generation 1, which you just did, generation 2, and generation 3. So that was really fast, but we're going to have some time for Q&A at the very end. So hang on. If you've got some questions, jot them down to yourself, and then we'll go ahead and cover those when we have a few more minutes. Let me now, though, go back to the PowerPoint slides, and let's talk about the next topic, AI-enabled discovery. And Scott's going to give us a little tour of this in just a minute, but let me give you the background on this. So what are humans really good at? Well, we're pretty darn good at engaging other humans. You know, when you really show interest in your customer, they just want to tell you more. So that's pretty good. You're also pretty good at asking questions based upon what the customer just said. Now, what's AI good at? They're really good at context. Man, there's all this stuff that's been known somewhere, and they can scrape that all up and remind us what that is. And they can even help us get some training by practicing. So let's take a look at an example. If you want to use AI, and this is all live now, so you can go to your Blueprinter software and do this whenever you want. Set up a new interview. Of course, you actually set that up in 2.1. And then you click, you can call it AI or AI practice, whatever you want. And then when you click on that, you are now in the Discovery Noteboard. Now, you got to look up in the upper right next to the gear, which is the settings. We now have a little AI button up here, okay? You're going to click that AI button, and the first thing you're going to do is fill in some of these fields. Now, what's a job executor? Well, that's the customer that you want to make happier, okay? If you make paint ingredients and you want to make paint producers happier about the way they process your ingredients, then you put paint producers in there. If you want to go to your customers, paint contractors, and see if you can help them do a better job of that job to be done, then you're going to put them in there. So I'm going to put in paint contractors, and we can specify North America or any region or any other limiter if we want. Now, what's the job to be done? Well, those paint contractors are painting the interiors of homes, okay? And they're using semi-gloss paint. Now, Scott's found that asking for about 18 problems seems to be a nice thing to do here. So we do that, and then we go ahead and we ask ChatGPT to load some suggestions. It'll take about 30 minutes or 30 seconds for that to happen. Now, it's important to tell you that the only thing you're sharing with ChatGPT are these fields that I just showed you. So it's not like you're giving up the store. It's really like a Google search is what it is. So don't worry too much about the security aspects of that. Now, when you do that, you're going to get them 18 problems are coming back to you here. Uneven application, visible brush roller or roller marks, poor adhesion. And so that's how this works. Now, you can accept or reject these. Scott's going to take us on a tour, and I'm going to stop sharing and let him take over on this. But while we're doing that, after the AI, we're going to just spend a couple of minutes on Everyday VOC. We're going to open it up to Q&A, and then we're going to have a little fun. Now, here's the fun. If you have any topic you would like to stump AI on, put it in the chat. And so when we're done with the main part of the meeting, we'll handle Q&A. And we'll also, if you have something you want to just test a little bit, we'll give it a try here, have a little fun with this. So Scott, go ahead and take us away on a tour here, and I'll quit croaking with my bad voice.
And if you wouldn't mind keeping an eye on that waiting room, keep letting people in the meantime. All right, and it must be a bad day for throats because mine hurts a bit too. So I'm pulling my microphone a little closer. Hopefully I'm not blowing anybody away there. But so everybody, you can see my screen, I assume. Yep. Let me hit the, well, I'm not going to do the maximizer because I'm going to want to use these other tabs, which I'll show in a minute. So this is just a file or project that in Blueprinter I just opened up this morning. You know, you can see we've got our 5 steps of Blueprinter ready to go. The AI is within step 2, discovery interviews. And the reason for that is, well, there's lots of things AI can do clearly to help with your project. But our scope is pretty narrowly focused on a couple things. When you're preparing to do a customer interview, like what's the background information you might want to know? What's just the general information you might want to know around a market? And also, you know, we also use AI to do, as Dan just demonstrated, an AI-driven interview result. Now, there's going to be, as probably everybody's familiar with, the positives and limitations of AI, meaning you can get these hallucinations and things. And so you'll want to vet the information that comes back. But at the same time, you've only spent a few minutes, right? You've only spent a few minutes, and here you've got what, what I believe is a pretty good list of customer needs for that market. So let's look at how we would do this. So first, you would in the software, as Dan showed, you would go to 2.1 and you would set up one called AI Practice. Let's, for the fun of it, let's do one, because I was playing with this morning. Let's do another one, AI Practice 2, and from there, let's see, we can study anything we want to. Let's think about manufacturing. Electric vehicles. That's a popular, timely topic. So this is what we want to understand, all the challenges that somebody has when manufacturing electric vehicles. So when we go to 2.5, and this is where normally we would go when we're ready to do an interview, but this time we're going to interview the AI engine. So we select AI Practice 2, and we see our scope there, manufacturing electric vehicles. Now, if I was going to really interview somebody, this is also what you would see. I would make it look a little nicer with this maximizer, but we're not going to worry about that today. So you see this AI button right there, enter into AI mode. So I select that, and from there we use jobs to be done language as a way of asking questions, asking prompts for the AI. Now, one of the challenges we had when sort of coming up with this interface is, if the prompts aren't asked correctly, you don't get great information. And there are already, as you've probably seen, courses on how to write AI prompts. But, we wanted to make that as easy as possible for somebody. We don't want you to have to take a course on writing AI prompts. And so the language that we have used is the language within this area of jobs to be done, something that's been used in innovation for over 20 years. And so we do have a little bit of terminology, which I'll explain. So job executor, this is the person or type of company you would interview. And so let's go with manufacturing engineers. Why not? This is who we want to interview. And then we have this where we can provide contextual details. But before I go to that, then we have the job to be done. This is what this person would be doing. And I've already established it's manufacturing electric vehicles. Hard to type when it's under pressure. People are watching. But from there, we've got a couple more fields. So we can add contextual details to manufacturing engineers. We'll just go within the United States. We could put anything on here. Manufacturing electric vehicles. I'll just leave that as is for right now. Maybe we'll add some context in a minute. But then this precision, this is the number of problems that the challenges in this market that will come up. If we make this number, we can make it anything. I mean, you can make it 2, 1, 2, or 3. But what happens with the smaller numbers, you get these sort of big problems that are very abstract. The higher this number, the more detail you get about each particular need. And just in our experimentation, we found 18 to sort of be that happy medium. So I'm going to hit load AI suggestions. This does take a little bit of time, and I've noticed that it even takes a little bit more time when on Zoom. So apparently Zoom itself, takes a little bit of the bandwidth that it would normally be using.
And Scott, every now and then you get an error message. It's not very pretty. You want to mention that while that's cooking?
Every now and then, there's an error message that will come. We didn't get it now, and most of the time, what we found is it's just something in the internet traffic, and so we found is just try it again. However, it could be there's something in the way you worded these phrases. In the United States, what this context should define manufacturing engineers. If I just said manufacturing vehicles, I could put down here powered by electricity, which is sort of the same thing. But we're back to English class. This phrase needs to modify this group. So we just had manufacturing vehicles. Now we had powered by electricity. Here we had manufacturing engineers in the United States. Well, maybe if I get a little bold, maybe we'll try some additional, maybe I'll experiment, see if we can try to break it. But we'll look back at that a second. But big picture, this job executor, this is who you would be interviewing. This job is what they are doing. Manufacturing engineers who are manufacturing vehicles powered by electricity. And then you get this list. So you get supply chain challenges, and then there's some details behind that one. High production costs, and there's some details behind this one. So this is simulated. If you were interviewing manufacturing engineers, these are some of the challenges that they might have brought to you. So we could try something a little bit different. If we went to design engineers, okay, I'm going off script. I'm feeling confident. Dan,
there you go.
Dan likes experimentation. So let's take that United States away. Design engineers. I don't know. I sort of do like geography from China this time. And this time they're designing cars. Yeah. We'll just leave it there. So we switched from manufacturing engineers to design engineers, and then we changed their topic to now it's about designing. It's not about manufacturing. So let's see what we get there. And then I'll do a non-manufacturing example here after this one comes up. I've noticed it's sort of variable how much time it takes. That 30 seconds tends to be about right, but it's like anything. It seems longer when you're waiting. You're sitting there watching.
Up, could you show them the 12 per page view also, Scott? I just think that's so impressive.
Oh,
sure. All these things.
Yep, you bet. So you can see now from manufacturing to design, we got this different. So we'll go to this 12 per page, as Dan mentioned. So now we went from manufacturing engineers to design engineers. Like we changed the audience. So design engineers, look at this. Packaging constraints for battery placement, findable suitable locations within the vehicle to accommodate large battery packs. So you can see that that's not something that a marketing person, for example, would be. A marketing person wouldn't be worried about how are they going to find space within the vehicle for the large battery packs. But the design engineer clearly would. Now, as we're going through these, if you find one, hey, you know what? I think that sounds pretty. Notice these are all gray because we're not. And also over here, problems, it says 0 because we really want you as the user to read it and say, yes, I believe that at least has the potential to be a valid concern. So I hit accept, it turns yellow, and we have one problem there. But I love this particular example because our audience was our design engineers. And here we have a customer need completely relevant to that design engineer, not as much the manufacturing engineer. Certainly a marketing person or an executive, aren't thinking about this except to the degree that it causes them problems. But the design engineer, man, this is like probably one of their biggest things. What else do we find here? Thermal management of battery systems. So the degree that they put off heat and the other challenges that creates for design. Now that sounds like a valid thing to me. But now, I said it sounds like a valid thing to me, right? So does this mean we don't need to interview customers? Not at all. This is getting, look, in the 1993 article, Voice of the Customer, there was a very interesting chart, and it showed that you have to interview a certain number of customers to get to 100% of all the customer needs in that space. That's great. But there's nothing that says, especially with AI, there's no reason to go to that first customer at 0. In other words, there's no reason to go to that first customer with we don't have any idea of the customer needs in the space. Even when doing this type of work for clients, one of the things I always recommend, hey, before we go talk to customers internally, what do we think that some of the needs are? And let's go ahead and brainstorm that list. But also keep in mind, this is within the divergent phase. The divergent phase of Voice of the Customer. We don't know that any of these are important. So it's we want to err on the side of including things. Our error here is leaving something out. We prioritize in a later phase in the process.
God,
so
I think
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. We don't know yet how this will be used, but I think it's a reasonable assumption. Scott and I have shown this to quite a few of the teams we've been coaching. And they're like, oh, my goodness, this could have saved us several interviews. Because to Scott's point, if you think about the purpose of discovery, divergent phase, it's to eliminate errors of omission, which is failing to uncover an unarticulated need. And this certainly could help with that, right, Scott? You get a lot of these right off the bat. Absolutely.
And just think real practically. You imagine, so you're going to interview Tesla tomorrow, okay, or later in the week. You're going to be, in my opinion, much better prepared having run through some of these scenarios, having an idea of some of the things you might hear, you very well may hear, you're a little more prepared and advanced. And so when you hear those, you'll recognize it a bit faster, and you'll be able to sort of move. You'll be able to more deeply probe and go into depth more quickly. So you will definitely be better prepared for this interview than you would be without. So this is a manufacturing example. Let's do something. Let's mix it up here. Let's bring the marketing folks back in here. Let's go to marketing executives. Let's stay in the same industry, from automotive companies. Let's stay domestic here within the United States. But what are we going to do? We're not making them now. We're promoting electric cars. And we're going to get even more specific. We even have a particular benefit in mind. So this is fairly narrow scope. So we did sort of a broad one. I want to do a narrower scope, completely different one, for national energy independence. All right, that's very, Scott can spell independence. So marketing executives from automotive companies in the United States promoting electric cars, and we're going right for what the core benefit would be. And let's see, sort of what we get here.
Well, and while that's coming up, I'll just mention one other thing we're seeing. We're starting to use this as we coach teams to say, how would you probe on number 2? How would you probe on number 3? So imagine if you go in cold and you hear one of these outcomes without any prior knowledge, you got to think of that probing right then. But you can, ahead of time, start thinking about how you would probe on some of these things. So we think from that standpoint, it could be quite powerful as well. Well, you got a tough one here for him. It really made him think.
Well, there it came. Look, so if you're a marketing executive but you want to promote electric cars. So here's your challenges: lack of consumer awareness, range anxiety. They're concerned about, I would be. So we're going to say, that sounds like a legit thing. Range anxiety. There's a lack of charging stations in rural areas. So if I'm a marketing person now, it's a completely, we're a long ways away from, we don't have anything about, there's no space to put the batteries, or there's, the heat that the batteries put off, how we deal with that for the car, because it's a different audience. It's a marketing audience.
Great stuff, Scott. Really good.
So again, with everything, when I first met Dan, our very first conversation, I was actually a prospect, I guess you would say at the time. I looked at the completeness of everything Dan had built and put together, and I said, one of the things that's clear to me is you continually innovated your own product, and where something was a challenge for a customer, you added something. And so for our current Blueprinting users, and for folks that might be thinking about becoming one, here's one of the resources that will be very helpful for everything, but particular with something new like this. It's our Blue Help resource. And if you typed AI into there, you get this first article, which explains everything about how to use the AI function, the limit, how to use it, etc. But the thing I wanted to point out was this, just as an example. I mean, one of the things to using this feature is you do need to get up to speed on this terminology. What's a job executor? Oh, this is the person you'd like to interview. And again, the term job executor implies the person who's executing the job. Then here's some examples of the context, how you might narrow the scope. Manufacturers of cardboard boxes, distributors of plumbing supplies. The job, this is the topic you'd like to query AI about. It should always begin with a verb. Gerund forms are okay as well. And then precision, that's just going to be the higher that number, the more detail you're going to get, the lower that number, fewer things you get, and the more abstract answers. But this is just one example of how we have the instructions for everything that you need. And in this particular article, there's a video at the bottom also walking through it.
It's a great point, Scott. And Kevin just left us chat message, which I think is good. You could see something here and say, oh, I want to probe more on that, feed that back into AI, and then go even more detail, couldn't you?
100%. We could try that right now. Running action. Yeah. Let's see.
Go ahead.
Let's see. We're taking risk here now.
I'll tell you what. Why don't I go wrap things up, and then we'll use that as one of the things we play around with at the end. Is that okay?
Well, yeah.
Go ahead. You got it.
Let's see. So we're going deep.
Yeah, there you go.
So I chose to go deep into that range anxiety.
Let's do it.
Now, 18 within range anxiety, that sounds like a lot. But hey, you can't break the thing. So how much time do you have invested in interviewing a customer? All the time setting it up, conducting it, all the logistics, you've just got a couple minutes here. So there's no reason not to play around with it. So look, now we've got 18 all within this concern of range anxiety. And again, whatever. So
I love it.
Yeah, that's a totally valid point. You could, whatever you get, you could use this to go deeper within that one.
Cool. Good. Thanks, Kevin, for that. And thanks, Scott. This is very exciting. We're going to learn a lot more. Please give us feedback on this too, right? We're learning. It's only been out for what now? Just a few weeks, I guess. Cool. Should I take it back?
Yes, you bet.
So as I'm doing this, as I'm coming back to where we left off, think about if you've got an example that you'd like to try, okay? And if you do, then we're going to go ahead and we'll put it in at the end. We're getting pretty close to the end here. I want to just summarize this on AI a little bit. Today, as Scott said, it familiarizes you with the industry terminology. It's great practice for building your voice of customer skills. How would I probe this? How would I probe that? We think it will reduce the number of discovery interviews you're going to need to do. But in the future, we're not stopping here. We're looking to see how we can pull AI in on the secondary market research, mapping out the steps of the customer's processes for job maps, outcome maps. Maybe it can suggest some outcome statements based upon what's in the sticky note. Remember the outcome statement, minimize time needed to. We already are very close to being able to do real-time international translations, which is driven by AI. And who knows, maybe someday it'll even give us, hey, ask the customer this during the interview. We're not sure about that one. So those are all the possibilities on AI. Let me take 4 or 5 minutes, mention everyday VOC, and then we're going to open it up to general questions. And if anybody has a project you'd like Scott to do, we'll see if we can stump AI here on your project in that discovery interview. But first, everyday VOC. Real quickly, this is a new offering we came up with about 11 months ago, taking our probing skills from blueprinting and applying it to sales, tech support, marketing for everyday interactions. We've been seeing a lot of sales organizations, especially at our existing clients, use this. Because, a long time ago, over 30 years ago, the landmark research that started the consultative selling movement found that when you ask good probing questions, you simply sell more. So that's obviously one role for the sales professional. But another role is for learning. And if the salesperson can be part of our early warning system to tell us when there are rising needs, that's what we want to do. So a quick example here. If you make glass that went into phone displays and you were wondering if crack resistance was a big problem, well, when your phones look like that, the companies would say, the phone manufacturer would say, no, it's not a problem. The phone display is too small. But at a certain point, it does become a problem. And eventually somebody comes along, in this case, it was Corning, they solve the problem. Now, here's the issue. If you're going to go and try to work on crack resistance, what's to say that you have not come in too early where they don't have a problem, or you've come in too late where they don't have a problem? Because you want to come in here. Our answer to that is let your sales force be that early warning system. Let them be a learning force to spot these rising needs, put them in the CRM, and then you can data mine these with simple keyword searches, or frankly, we're exploring AI for that as well. And so what's really, really cool, at least to me, is this. If you're in a meeting with a customer and you say, tell me more, you don't know if it's going to lead to selling something you've got today on the left, or if it's going to lead to something that will help you sell more later, but the same skills apply. So to wrap this up, we've created a 4-hour workshop. It could be for your sales force. It could be for your global business meetings. It could be virtual, or it could be in person. It does include 75-minute small group role playing where they work on these skills. They get 12 weeks of emails afterwards. And then we do some follow-up in small groups to make sure this stuff is actually sticking, giving them some different advice. There's a Everyday VOC resource center. I won't bother showing that to you right now, but lots of resources. It does not include software. So the point here is your salespeople already have a CRM, Salesforce.com or something else. Let them use that. And so no Blueprinter or other software comes along. So we've been doing this a lot with sales, annual sales meetings and so forth. So if you're interested in that, check out everydayvoctraining.com or just drop us, a note. So for some of you who came in later, if you want copies of the slide, the PDF, I think, Scott, you've got your email address also in chat. If you want,
that's right.
Send Scott an email. Also, he'll send you a copy of the recording. So we've got that as well. You'll have that as well. And just let us know if you have any questions, anything you'd like to pursue. Maybe there are some people in your company who use blueprinting who couldn't come here. We could even do an in-house private quick webinar for your people if that would be helpful. Just let us know. So let me do this. Let me open it up to any questions you may have. And also, if anybody had a sample project, we're glad to give it a whirl on AI as well. But I'll start with any questions. Just go ahead and unmute. Unless, Scott, has anybody already left a message in the chat that we should address?
Nope.
Okay. So feel free to unmute if anybody has a question.
Hey, Dan and Scott, it's Angelina. First and foremost, this is really great to see Blueprinter being ahead of the curve and providing more benefits to Voice of Customer Research. So great work to you both in the team. Question that I had is that if there are more than 18 problems that have been identified when using the AI search, how does Blueprinter AI determine which 18 are pulled?
Scott, I'll let you answer that. I think I know the answer, but I might get it wrong.
It's like if you can ask AI, write me 1,000-word essay on such and such, and it writes 1,000. If you ask for 18, it gives you what it believes to be the top 18.
Oh.
What tends to happen though, if you change the number, it's really more about the level of precision than the top. Because if you change that number to 10 from 18, you'll get higher level statements. I mean, actually, I could probably demonstrate.
Yeah, here,
that.
I'll stop sharing.
Let me demonstrate that. So it's more about the level of detail, which is all about precision. So let me share.
So when you did just like 5 problems, they were good, but they're almost like summarizing. And with outcomes, we like to get fairly granular, don't we, Scott?
Yeah. So let's promote electric cars to Americans, and let's put this at 2. So here, what are the 2 problems? So it's not that it does go to the top 2, but we have these much higher level statements. These 2 cover the same ground as that 18. It's not like these are 2 out of 18, right? So lack of awareness, if we boil it down to 2 problems, lack of awareness and understanding, which they sort of combine 2 there, I guess, but range anxiety and charging infrastructure. So those are the top 2. But those are just, what happens is when there's fewer of them, they become so abstract, they're not quite as useful.
What did you see, Scott? What did you see, Scott, when you had more than 18? What was the downside there?
You just get, it's not a downside per se. It's you get more detail.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of what level makes sense for your project. And just in our experimentation, as we think about it, the number 18 seemed like sort of to give us that middle ground of the level of detail, but not being too abstract. But
yeah, Scott, we got another question from S. Brown while that's cooking. Okay. Go ahead.
Hi, Scott and Dan. Again, echoing Angelina's comments that this is a fantastic update. Mine is it's more of a technical one. We have blocked anything from ChatGPT within our corporate structure.
Yeah.
So anybody accessing it through our essentially like our VPN network cannot access this. So will we have a problem using Blueprinter since it's web-based? Do you know?
I don't know.
What about that, Scott?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's interesting.
I honestly don't know. I sort of have a guess. Well, I'll just tell you, my guess is it would still be fine, but I don't.
Okay. Well, we'll play around with it, but I know a lot of corporate entities have blocked it because they're concerned about like if you can release proprietary information into ChatGPT, obviously.
Yes.
What you guys are suggesting makes a lot of sense because the prompts are like completely agnostic of proprietary information.
Yep.
But I know that that's, one of the things that people are being somewhat pensive about using it in a lot of private companies.
If it does, well, whether it works or not, it might be an interesting conversation with some of the folks who set the security parameters. And the way it was explained to me that really helped me was it's kind of like a Google search. You're not really putting in much more than you would for a Google search. And so maybe that would let the folks who set these policies say this is okay in this case. But we're all still learning. So great point. Yeah. Thank you.
So ChatGPT, they get the questions. So they will know what questions you asked. It doesn't know the answers, but it already knew the answers.
Right.
So it's not like it doesn't have a record of this answer, but it does have a record of what the prompts were asked. So, I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, I want to keep it. I mean, we could debate how useful that is to your competitors for ChatGPT to know that, but that's almost a separate question, right? That's where you're using it. Your IT says ChatGPT is blocked, so therefore now what? So we do have the ability to turn this off for you if that's a IT concern. I don't think it's a realistic. I don't think it's a realistic threat. But if that's neither here and that's just Scott's opinion, what do I know? But we can turn it off if that's a concern.
So I've got a question here. Have you tested the variation in output from the AI if you repeat the same question twice or make just minor modifications in the settings?
Yeah, it will sometimes be slightly different.
Interesting.
But I don't know if I had to give you a number, it's usually 95% the same. Something about querying it again will create slight differences, but nothing of any material. I mean, like there might be like these, so we could try that now. By the way, so here's our 40. So you see, we get lots more details for the person that's thinking about that, but they are slightly different when it's regenerated.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Thanks. Any other questions or anybody want to offer up unmute and offer up a project?
Hey, Dan.
Yes, Kevin.
This is Kevin, SBDC. I'm just amazed by what you guys do. It's always a thrill to be on these calls or to interact with you folks. Congratulations on all you're doing. It's amazing. So an interesting space right now is this whole carbon capture, to sequester carbon and to get carbon credits out of it. Yeah. And one thing I would want to investigate perhaps is what technologies are currently, not just the technologies, but the end users for the products that come out of the sequestered carbon, whether it's pyrolytic or it's carbon charred or it's oils or whatever. So that whole space, I think, is going to be very interesting, and especially with companies that can do a cyclical kind of sustainability program, the cyclical economy, where some of their waste is going back and they're taking the carbon credits back. So I'd be really interested to see what this would bring up and what the opportunities are in that space on a big picture. So really diverge before converge.
Yeah, so let's think that one through. We'll go ahead. We'll run.
Let's start with the who. So if you're going to do this project, who are you interviewing? Who has these problems?
That's a really interesting question because it depends in the company. There might be the head of sustainability, but it could be somebody that's got a waste product. So it could be, but you could try with the head of sustainability if you want. If that's too difficult, you could go to who would be responsible for a waste stream, an organic-based waste stream of some kind.
If it's multiple people in a company, just for a first pass, what type of companies? Let's start there.
Do you want to start with food manufacturing companies?
Okay.
So any particular, okay, manufacturing?
Food manufacturing companies, because they have a lot of waste streams.
Food manufacturing companies, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything about geography or
US?
Within the US.
Okay.
And so what are these companies, what are they doing around credits? What are they trying to do?
Well, you've got a food waste which might be landfilled, but you don't want to have it landfilled. So you might want to sequester it and then send it through, and produce carbon credits from it instead, which could reduce the carbon base. It could be a plastics company. I mean, it could be lots of different kinds of industries. I'm just picking one.
Reducing carbon footprint. Is that what they're trying to do?
Definitely that. Yeah.
All right. We'll start with that. We'll put this back on 18.
Sorry, it's a bit it's emerging and a bit specified. So,
but I think what Scott just did is really a good lesson here. Starting sometimes a little higher, and then going a little bit like into more specific ways of doing things. We've seen every now and then we'll get an error message. And it's generally when we're diving in really deep, specifying too much. So we start a little bit bigger and then kind of work our way in.
Yeah, because it could be landfill companies, right? Or waste management and these kind of groups too.
So for food companies or food manufacturers in the United States who want to reduce their carbon footprint, this is some of their challenges that came up.
Yep, some of the things are coming up that I've seen.
Let me go to a different view, just you sort of see the big picture there.
Now, when you click on that, the stuff underneath will come up, right? So you're going to click on that button. It's going to give you the statement.
Yeah, I just we can do that. We can see them all like that.
Okay.
I just thought let's just see sort of what everything is. Is there any? And we could go into any one of these. Transportation emissions, that certainly makes sense. That contributes to the carbon footprint. Inefficiency energy use is going to use more energy. That's going to be a higher carbon footprint.
Did landfill come up there at all? I would expect to see landfill. Systems. The packaging definitely is something.
So this is not landfill exactly, but this is, excessive packaging material and efficient packaging. That's that's a similar concept. Same. So it just breaks it down, right? So more chemicals used. So this is if this number goes smaller, maybe landfill might be sort of a larger. Instead of going landfill, it's sort of So look, we got water pollution, chemical pollution, packaging weight pollution. So it went. That's a great example of water usage. That would have been a higher, essentially waste disposal. So it didn't stop at that level. It's got more detail. If we did this at like 5, maybe it puts all those in one bucket.
Hey, Scott, this is Frank Buschke speaking. Just adding to Kevin's comment, it does say here inadequate waste reduction strategies. Maybe that hints to this particular area.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. And Frank, you also had a question in chat. Do we see differences in the output between B2C and B2B? I don't think we've checked that yet, have we, Scott?
I don't know why you would. It's just asking questions, right? I mean, we could let's see. Let's go with families. Let's just what do we want to do? Planning Disney World vacations.
With you on this. We kind of just ignored steps 4 and 5 for the last few years because who wants to work in Excel? But we're eager to work with you on that and see you take that further. So let us know if you are interested in that. Okay.
Can I tell you a fear, Dan? A fear? Going to give you a fear?
Yeah. I'm
kind of a bit reluctant letting this cat out the bag here because the blueprints are started. Remember, I've known you for 20 years, and this was a time when there was a lot more kind of face-to-face interaction than there is today. And those aha moments and those things you pick up during an interview and the bonding that you have and the willingness to collaborate through, because you're going to have to go back with an MVP to these people later and all this kind of stuff. And today, and the now middle generation, the younger generations, tend to go to this more kind of digital route? Is there a fear there might be something important missing, that they will skip the beat and not have that interfacial conversations that are so necessary?
I think it's a really good point you're raising, Kevin, because in most B2B, we have not one, but two objectives. One is indeed insight, figuring out all the problems that are out there. The second one, though, is engagement. Now, if you've got tens of thousands of, nail gun buyers, then don't worry about what I'm going to say. But let's imagine you have a market where maybe the top largest potential buyers represent 30, 50, 80% of the market buying power. So now think about this. I do AI and I get a lot of information, and I could cut my number of interviews down from 10 to 5. I could. But, I might decide, no, I'm going to interview all 10 of those, because I'm not just learning, I'm also engaging those customers. And if I can stay with them and then do preference interviews with them and then continue to stay in touch, they're going to probably be ready to buy when I'm ready to sell, because I engage them. So I think you're absolutely right. It's not just what can we learn, but it's how can we engage these customers? And there's no way of doing that better than having either an in-person or a virtual interview. So you're spot on, Kevin. Excellent. Other questions or observations?
I think it's similar to, the question of, is it better to do face-to-face or an interview via web conference? Well, there's pluses and minuses, right? I mean, the face-to-face is going to be the best for learning. It's the best for insight. It's the best for engagement. But also the face-to-face, you might have, let's just make up numbers. Maybe you've got 12 hours invested in that face-to-face, but all the planning and travel and everything, multiple people, versus the virtual, you've got 3 hours. So yeah, the face-to-face is better, but you've invested 12 hours instead of 3 hours. It's certainly better than this AI, but you've only got like 10 minutes invested. So now they all have a place. It's like it's another tool in the box, right? We would never say just do this, just do AI, and that's nothing. But what we are saying is you're better off with it. You'll be better prepared for that face-to-face. You have a head start on your real interviews. So yeah, we're definitely not saying this should replace face-to-face interviews, but it's another tool in the box that can make you all the more prepared. And there's the question. I'm sure this will keep coming up. It's like, well, we have concerns about using this, for IT or whatever. But when we do that, think about this: is your competition also saying that? If not, then in my opinion, you're probably a company's putting themselves at a disadvantage to the companies that are without that limitation.
Always puts and takes. So maybe we'll get ready to wrap it up. I just want to pick up on Scott's point on the competition. Most of the folks here in this call are blueprinting users. And so think about, would it help you to go to steps 4 and 5 on maybe a larger project? Can you start using AI? What we want to do is help you put even more daylight between what you're doing and what your competitors are doing. And there's more coming. There's a lot more we have planned for AI and for other upgrades. So keep us posted on anything. If you have questions, you've got Scott's email there. Let us know so we can get you the PDF and the recording of this. But also, if you need a little refresher in your company on blueprinting and what some of these new tools, or have some questions for us, let us know. We're here with you, and just let us know if we can help. Any last questions at all anybody has? All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. We'll be in touch, and anything you have, just drop us an email and we'll be glad to work with you. So
great work, Dan and Scott, as always. Excellent.
Thank you. Thanks so much.